Good morning. How are you? Ding, straight away. I'm just going to silence that. Here's the irony. All this work's just come up available, but I've scheduled this, but we do God's work. Which is a point that I wanted to make really early on. Excuse the clutter, but I've got all these things around me that I want to share with you. This broadcast is about home education. I've put it on both of my YouTube channels and my Facebook group. Those are Christian channels, but I don't want you to feel alienated if you are atheist, agnostic, or from another religion. I'm actually very spiritual rather than religious, and I'll try to keep the God mentions to a minimum, keep it appropriate for this, because what I'm going to share here is very appropriate for all educators, really. And I did make some notes last night. Sorry about the distractions. I did make some notes last night, and I'm glad I did, because I did not get much sleep last night. I ate foods, may have had some MSG and histamine in, and the result for me was like having coffee last thing at night. So I didn't get much sleep last night. So what I want to do in this is really set people's hearts at ease, those people who feel that they should be home educating, but they're anxious about it, nervous about it. I did do another video about home education, which was more about how to find out what the laws are in your area. I'm not sure why my printer just woke up, and I just realized I don't have water. So I will sneak out for a water break at some stage. I'm not sure how long this could go for. I've told someone 90 minutes, so that's what we'll try to stick to. Okay, so there's a whole host of different reasons people home educate. There are a lot of Christian people who feel led by God. And then one of the other top reasons is that their children have learning challenges and diagnoses such as ASD and ADHD, which is autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I'm going to touch on ADHD as part of this video. When you are home educating, the relationship that you have with your child is really important, but don't switch off now and go, oh, well, home education is not for me, because by home educating, you can actually improve your relationship with your child. The main reason would be that you don't have the time pressures of getting ready in the morning. My daughter was catching a bus last year, so there was a lot of pressure around some very serious physical and emotional needs to get her to the bus on time. This year, my circumstances are different. If she's running late to school, that's fine. I can drop her off later, but my preference is that she doesn't miss the start of school. I just want to apologise for my appearance. I think I did mention that the power had outed, the switch had tripped, the safety switch for some reason. So it was a little bit of a rushed start this morning. So I'm going to go through my notes just to share the sort of things that I am going to touch on. The sorts of things that a home educating parent might want. And if you're on here, feel free to add in the comments any of your questions about home education, any of your worries, concerns, and fears. One of the top things would be how to be confident about the materials that are being covered, that you are covering the right materials for your child. How can you see progress being made, and fears that your child might not have a future if you mess this up. What about social skills and social opportunities if you're home educating? I'm going to go through issues around relationship, and make a reference to NVC, or nonviolent communication, and some of the needs that our children have, and that if those needs are met, it's going to be easier for us to be harmonious in caring for our children. There is a relatively easy path with home education, and it's not cheating, and it's not letting your children down. And I'm going to describe that path, but it's one that best meets the needs of your children. I'm going to describe some of the items that you can actually source for free that can be very useful in home educating in a way that engages your child easily. Some of the activities, a little bit about learning style. And I know there's resources out there saying learning style isn't a thing. In my experience, it is a thing. But if you teach in the way that I'm going to talk about today, you will find that sorry, I'm already tired. I'm losing my train of thought. You'll find that the learning styles become irrelevant because this is holistic education and it basically covers all the learning styles. I discuss how if your child has challenges, learning challenges, then they'll also have gifts, and to be open to discovering those gifts. Something called proprioception and interoception. They're two senses that if your child has a label of ADHD, that's going to be very, very relevant for you. A little bit about mindful parenting and how creating a rich environment really supports children to learn innately. Children generally are driven to learn. They're curious. We're all engaged and motivated when things are new. It makes things interesting, but then once the brain wires it up, we move on to the next thing. So you want to really think about setting up an environment that engages the children like that. So I'll talk about how to do that. Developmentally appropriate does not mean the right content for your child's age, but for their development. Learning at home, we'll have a quick chat about unschooling and then some of the activities that you can just do around the house that can help your children. Now, right up front, I want to say that I talk about play-based learning and child-led learning. Play-based learning is more appropriate for the younger age, definitely below 7 years of age. It's all you need to do education-wise in partnership with providing a rich environment. But once they're 7 up to 12, it can still be play-based learning to some degree, and I'll describe how you would do that in that age group. And then in all age groups, child-led, and that can go on to high school and high school years, upper primary, and I'll describe how that looks in the different age groups. So that's all the bits that I want to go through. I'm just going to grab my water right now. Hopefully that's enough water to keep me going. With all this clutter on my desk, I am at risk of going down so many tangents today because there's just some really exciting stuff available out there as far as resources, as far as information to help you on your home education journey. At the same time, you don't need to enter into information overload. And if you are brand new to home education, there is a couple of things I would recommend. One is if your child's suffering a lot of anxiety and what do they call it? I think it's called like school hesitation or something, where the child doesn't want to go to school, then unschooling might be a really good idea. It can still be educational. You can keep a record of that. And I'm not sure, I might share a couple of things. I can't remember if I shared them on my previous video, which I'll try to remember to link here. For example, if I was going to unschool my daughter, I might do a lot of fun things that she might choose to engage in. I'm not even going to tell her to do anything. So it might be that I cook some really cool stuff, and most kids are going to want to cook, particularly if you start cooking a cake or something, they're going to want to be involved with that. You might do gardening and they're going to come along and start picking up, depending on the age, picking up worms from the garden and noticing bugs and starting educational conversations that way with you. If you don't need know the answers, that's fine. Part of the educational process can be showing your child how, hey, we can go on this naturalist Facebook group and post a photo of that creature, and someone's going to be able to tell us all about that creature or what the name of that creature is so we can research it further. Unschool, it might mean that you do some lovely excursions. It could just be going to beaches, playgrounds, and you could go to the local museum, things like that. You can probably find a Facebook group somewhere online or a website with all ideas of places to go with your children in your region. Sorry, I do need to keep checking this. Um, awesome. Just locking some paid work in. Beautiful. Okay. Where do we start? So those first questions, I think I will just hold them up for you. I think I'll cover them through the process. Okay, or I might touch on them briefly here. To be confident about the materials covered. So some people think, oh, homeschool, home education, I need to set up like a school environment and make it look like a school, make it feel like a school, and teach like a school. That kind of defeats the purpose of doing home education in some ways. Yes, you avoid your crazy school morning rush and routine. Depending on your child's conditions, maybe it avoids them some embarrassment at school or anxiety at school, all that sort of stuff. But there's actually some huge opportunities that you have now that you're homeschooling to really engage your child and help them grow in ways that the schools don't help children grow. So it's been said by many commentators that our modern educating system teaches children facts, but it doesn't teach them skills, problem-solving skills, life skills, problem-solving skills so much. And it sort of teaches them facts, but it doesn't teach them how to learn. Once you teach your child how to learn, they will become a lifelong learner with confidence. So you want to feel and see progress being made. And I would say, so long as you're not comparing your child to somebody else, you should see some progress, even if it's very small. If you have a child with huge developmental delays, maybe it will be small progress. Particularly if you do have a child with huge developmental delays, one of the best ways to see progress is to do something novel, introduce somebody novel. That means someone new that they haven't met before. Again, caution with that because that can also backfire depending on the child. Or go somewhere different. It's the novelty factor that can actually bring a breakthrough with a child who has extreme challenges. And if you don't see progress, then it is time to get somebody in to help, but it needs to be someone who understands home education and the opportunities that are laid out with home education, not someone who's going to judge you and make you, shake your confidence. I was just trying to think of an example there. So if you could find an OT, for example, who understands the benefits of home education and works with you to say, okay, well, if they're not making progress in this area, try changing this about the environment or changing this about what you're delivering. Maybe what you're delivering is too difficult, so go back a little step, or maybe what you're offering is too easy, and so your child is just disinterested. Some of those sorts of suggestions, and they might be able to give you specifics. You might be able to find someone who can give you some guidance as well. You want to feel that your child has a future. The single worst thing we can do as a parent all round is to be fearful of outcomes for our child. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't care about outcomes for our children, but when we fear the outcomes for our children, it shows a real lack of trust and faith in them, and it actually sets us up to have a lot of tension in ourselves. And shark music, if anyone's come across do shark music, which is the negative thoughts that we might be hearing. So I'll give you an example from my life with my eldest daughter, who's 21, and she's absolutely beautiful, amazing, gifted, talented. She used to decorate her bunk bed the same way my brother used to, and to me it was just random bits of string and paper stuck on there, and I got this shark music going, oh no, she's going to turn out just like my brother. And sad to say that, yes, my brother ended up on drugs since the age of 15, and now I understand he's in and out of hospital with collapsed lungs because of complications from drug abuse. So I had that shark music, so I had a lot of tension, which means that I wasn't as patient as I could be with her. So be aware of where your fears are coming in and unsettling your household and your relationships. Yes, that happened to my brother, but there was a lot of toxicity in the environment my brother grew up in. If you take out that fear factor and are capable of self-reflection, and you know that you're able to go and read a couple of books or watch some videos about how to have a healthy relationship with your family, then there's a good chance your child is going to have all the benefits they need for the optimal outcome for them. Social skills and opportunities is a no-brainer. Pretty much everywhere in the world that you are, you can go online and find a home education forum. Usually on Facebook you will find one, and there you can connect with other families. My daughter has friendships outside of school, but I was being criticized by someone like, if you home educate, you know, she'll be stuck in the house with just you all the time, and how's she going to develop social skills, etc. And so just to make sure that I thoroughly ticked that box, I went on the Facebook group and I said, this is who we are, this is what we're like, we're looking for someone similar in that I'm a relaxed older mum. I'm 45, my oldest daughter's 21, my youngest is 7. I've been around a long time. There's a lot of things that don't stress me out that stress out first-time mums. So that's what I was looking for really, was someone similarly experienced and relaxed about parenting. And by relaxed, I'm not saying neglectful, I'm saying relaxed, at peace. And we actually found someone who my daughter gets along very well with in the same street as us. How amazing is that? But we connected with some other families as well, and we actually have a list of families to go through to gradually meet them. And over time, we might find that some of those aren't really the best fit for our family, and others we will. And the frequency of play dates, don't think that more is always better. So your children might get overwhelmed if they're having a play date every day or even every week. It might be that a play date every 3 weeks suits your family better. Who knows? The other thing is for social skills and opportunities, if your child has a label that was going to set them up to have social skill issues anyway, you can look into different resources. So I'm not going to whittle right down into the finest detail for everything, but what I'm going to do is keep flicking through to my other browser and just show you how easy, hopefully I won't be proven wrong, how easy it is to actually find resources online to support your home education journey. So applications, talking to myself, sorry. Okay, so straight away, that's actually a really good book for many people, The Explosive Child. Social skills, different ways you can teach children. There's a website there. You'll find resources on YouTube as well. Okay, so it's that easy. Just teach your child social skills. That's all I searched. Okay. Now, in most regions, home educators have set up groups for their children to connect with other children. And it might just be for free play at a playground, or it might be a structured day of learning where parents take turns bringing different activities to share with the children. All right, your relationship MVC. This is where I am going to go in and share some resources with you. Nonviolent communication is difficult to describe in a nutshell. The best thing that I can do is share with you my experience of learning about it 10 years ago now. And I'd heard about it. It cost a lot of money to learn, which had put me off or really just prohibited my access to it back then. It's not the case anymore. And I finally got a wonderful opportunity. You know, I really felt led to it. Someone actually approached me saying, can you advertise these MVC lessons? And I said, look, I'd love to do that, but I don't have the money. And they said, come along, we'll do a payment plan. So I spent 2 full days over a weekend, and I was the only single with a bunch of couples. And we learned MVC, and I'll point you to the direction to learn about that. And when I went home, my children were saying, within half an hour of going home, my children were saying, wow, Mum must have really liked having her weekend away from us because she's changed so much. And it wasn't so much that I'd changed as my approach to them had changed as I was applying what I learned that weekend through MVC. So the big shift for me using MVC was to know that we all have needs, that need to be met. We shouldn't oblige others to meet them, but if you have children, it's natural that their parents should be meeting those needs. You need to be aware of that. So we have needs that need to be met. MVC teaches how to express those needs and request support to meet those needs. And sorry, very tired brain. And also I had a mindset, instead of taking offense and judging my children when they did something wrong, I'd be curious. Oh, okay, they've done this. They've spoken to me in this way. They've behaved this way. What's the unmet need in them that's having them behave that way? So my children weren't that old back then, maybe 8, I don't know, maybe 9. Yeah, sorry, 9 or 10. 5 and 2, maybe something like that. I think they were actually a little bit younger. And so you can imagine the younger children wouldn't be very good at expressing themselves. And so if they were too hot or too tired or too hungry, something like that, instead of coming up and say, hey, Mum, I feel really hungry, what can I eat? Or realizing to take their jumper off, for example, they would just melt down. Or, like if they're overtired, rather than go for a rest, they might just melt down. So that would be an indication of an unmet need, rather than some of us might see that as this child's just being naughty, I'm offended, etc., etc. It's really good to get to a point where you're not offended by anything. The dog's grumbling at me for keeping her awake. Easier said than done, but MVC is a really good starting point for that. So, sorry, I just popped back in here and I'm going to share my screen again and just walk you through a couple of those resources. MVC. No. Let's draw that out a bit. Now, the person who created nonviolent communication was a guy called Marshall Rosenberg. And have a look at this. So I think I paid $200, which was a lot of money for me back then, 11 years ago. The book that he wrote on it is here available as an audiobook. That would be a really good starting point. He also has his workshops here on this video. And what I might do is see if I can grab a link to pop in the comments box for you for some of these. His instructional videos, I went through them all. You'll find from his voice, I found, and being a mum to young children, I was very tired and I would get sleepy. So I would have to rewind and rewind. So what I'm linking is the audiobook. It's the quickest way to get immersed in nonviolent communication. But there's starting to be a lot of great YouTube channels about nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg himself has actually passed away, and maybe that's opened the door for people to produce some more appealing and accessible content. That's possible. I think it's 2 L's. But I urge you not to stop at these links, but have a little explore yourselves. This lady, she has lovely bite-sized videos teaching MVC. I'm just going to put modern. Okay, so there's a few links that have just gone out along with my video for you. Let's see what else is on here. So if I search, we've searched nonviolent communication, free audiobook from Audible, but you probably have to sign up to Audible. Center for Nonviolent Communication. Now, I'm pretty sure I saw a home education video by this lady recently that was coming up as this lady. Interesting. So that might be a really good one to connect with. So here we go. This is the Center for Nonviolent Communication. Let's see if they still have some of their resources. Articles. Let's have a look. 10 steps to peace. Let's have a look here. Okay, what I'm looking for isn't coming up. Now with MVC, it does cost a lot of money and time to become a trainer. So proper trainers will actually generally charge a fair bit for your time, for their time. So if you can't afford that, or you can't get away from your children, take advantage of all these other resources that I'm showing you. So what I'm actually going to search is non-violent communication needs list. Needs list. Or needs inventory. So that is at that website I just showed you. I'm just not sure where exactly we find it. So this is really interesting, and I highly recommend, I'll link this website as well for you, going through this needs list, but you can also go through a feelings list. So when you're expressing yourself to somebody else, let's have an example. Let's just say there's toys all over the dining table, and in most home educating families, you will find even if the children have a desk, home education activities will gravitate towards the dining table, and then it's not available for eating it. With my family, that really matters because we tend to have a lot of spills. So I really want to keep eating in this room where it's an easy, clean room. So I might say, hey guys, I feel a bit frustrated, and I actually feel like I might flip my lid soon. I'm actually getting close to feeling angry because I looked at the dining table and there's a lot of toys on the dining table, and I'm cooking dinner and I'm about to serve dinner, but there's nowhere to serve the food. Would you be willing to take your toys off the table, maybe put them where they belong or put them in a basket so that we can use the dining table in 5 minutes? And you've put a pressure on your child then also by saying in 5 minutes, because there's a time limit on them. Now, let's have a look at some of the needs that we have. I've just expressed my needs, but our children have some really important needs. And if we're not meeting those needs, children are going to push back or withdraw. So one of those needs is autonomy. So autonomy is being able to choose for ourselves what we do, when we do it, how we do it, that sort of thing. So oftentimes with a child, if we give them a few options, they don't feel the need to push back. So I'm going to give you another, this one's a real life example from when I just studied MVC. And I'm just going to stop screen sharing now. Sorry, tickly nose here. I'm just going to block a user who's spamming us. And I'm going to that MVC website where you can actually find training as well. So my little girl must have been about 4, and she'd come to me and she'd said, Mum, I want to play with the beads. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, the beads are so messy. And I said, look, yes, if you clean up later, because I'm too busy to help clean up. So she played with the beads and she made quite a mess in the bedroom. And I said to her later on, look, it's time to clean up. And you did say that you would clean those beads. But I recognized in her that she was feeling overwhelmed. And so she was really struggling with that. And so I rephrased it and I said, I'm cooking dinner. Everyone will be coming home and needing to eat soon. So I can't stop eating dinner. I don't have time to help you right now clean your room. In fact, I don't think I'll have time and energy to help you clean your room until tomorrow. And because I'd backed off and given her some autonomy about when she would clean up, she went in there fully energized to clean up the bedroom and raced back through and said, I've cleaned up, big celebration. So that's a really important indicator of how giving our children autonomy can bring really amazing results. But that's just a couple of examples of how MVC can work. Now, if you can apply MVC in your relationship with your children while you're home educating, it's going to do you a world of good. It's going to mean your children are compliant, as in they will go through the material that you require of them, so long as you've been sensible in how you've said it and what you've chosen. And they're going to be motivated. But another thing that I really strongly want you to consider, and that is the concept of education being child-led. Now, obviously, in a classroom setting, that can be a bit more challenging. I was doing family daycare before, and I would set up specific materials and resources in the classroom that I was happy for children to use, and then they could go in and access it and use it. So it was child-led. They knew what other materials were available and could request them, so that I could put out items that were maybe not that safe or that were very messy, and supervise, because I knew, because I'd help them get them out, I knew that those items were out. So have a think about what items you want out for your children. I would strongly recommend not having a really, really cluttered environment. Have a storage space where you box up some of your resources, but you're going to have some items that are pretty much out and available all the time, where your child can get to them. Also, follow your child's natural lead into the workspaces they're going to use. So my daughter has a desk, but it tends to get cluttered. But what she loves to do is use the dining table because it's near to me if I'm in the kitchen. Or we have a lovely coffee table that she likes to use, which again can be a bit annoying. I'm just going to mute myself a second. Okay. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. So that support, so being child-led. So how child-led looks with little children, I think it was Magda Gerber that said that play is children's work. Now, this is not to say that you have to stand over them with a whip and make them do it. No, it means we need to respect their space and their choices that they make, and support and facilitate their capacity to learn by providing a rich environment. That doesn't mean a very cluttered environment. It might be an environment, say if you have cube shelves, you might have a shelf with a whole heap of books, but you might have others where it's just one resource, one toy that is displayed really nicely. So it's appealing to children. They feel more motivated to engage with that item. Now, child-led. So that's the early learning. You might give a child options as to what to gravitate towards, and children will gravitate towards different items depending where they're at developmentally. And like I said, if an item is a bit novel and different, children are going to be motivated to engage with it. Children do like to have some familiarity in their space, but it's a good idea to swap out some resources, maybe from week to week or month to month, depending on the children. If you are in a primary school setting, how you might do something as child-led is, again, you have specific appropriate resources. They can choose the resources and they can choose their topics with support from you. You can actually sort of funnel them into different areas by thinking about what items you have out. So if you would like your child to cover some sort of bug studies that term, you might make sure that a couple of the books that are out are about bugs. And you might download some videos if you're using screen time that are about different types of bugs. I do need to talk about screen time, and I'll try not to forget that. As a teenager, after a child's 12, being child-led might look like that child chooses their interest and they go with that interest. So if a child's interested in woodwork, for example, you can cover all the major areas with that, because they might do a project where you encourage them to write about what their plan is. Maybe they're going to make a piece of furniture. They're going to write about what the plan is, or they're going to tell other people about it. I mean, they're telling you probably. So straight away, that's literacy practice. There'll be maths involved with the design. There'll be learning hands-on skills. They may well get some support from somebody else. You might bring a tutor in to teach them how to use different tools. And so that's social skills at play. If you're creative, you can even bring in history and geography, social science, etc. Okay, well, where is this tree from? Where's it grown? How far has it traveled from, etc., etc. So the child can have a topic that they're passionate about, and you can really just support them to engage through that topic, but bring all those different learning elements into that topic. Using technology, just accessing YouTube, for example, on instructional videos. Children need to feel safe. That's a really important one. So you do need a peaceful home environment. Rudolf Steiner talks about this. If you look up Waldorf education, I'm just going to write that in the comments there. Waldorf education is very holistic, so it takes care of all these needs that children have. And like I say, a really important one is to feel safe. So your home does need to be a safe space for your children. Many people home educate because their children, for different reasons, suffer anxiety around being at school. If a child's anxious, we actually flip our lid and can't access our logical brains. So when a child's anxious, they're not really learning. I'm just going to try to find science of flipping your lid. How long is this video? 7:28. So I'm just going to link to it, but I encourage everybody to watch it. And you could even share this video with your child. You might decide to be trauma informed if your child's been through any sort of trauma. And there are different resources on the internet. Let's see if I can bring up. I'm just trying to find this specific. Search somewhere else. That's it. It's transforming challenging behaviors online conference. And she reduces the cost of this material so that I think at one stage you could access the audio versions for $20. So I'm going to link this website, but definitely explore that. And if you absolutely cannot afford whatever she's offering, just go on YouTube and search. A lot of what she teaches is about being trauma informed. Okay. Children need to feel seen and heard. So we can be very, very busy. Thankfully, if you're home educating all of your children, your life can become a lot slower, and that can be absolutely beautiful. One of the things we've been loving doing is I can give my daughter verbal instructions to cook her breakfast, and then we'll go and eat together outside. I have a little dining table outside under cover. So we can do that instead of the rush to school. And I just want to say here and now that my child is actually currently attending school, because there's some legal hoops I need to jump through, which don't affect most families, but the nature of ours is that it does. But we still consider ourselves home educators, and she never stops learning. And during school holidays, we look just like any other home educating family, and very well sort of engaged with the home educating community. Children feel a need to contribute. So it's actually beneficial to invite them to help with some of the chores around the house, and young children absolutely love that. I don't know about you guys, but I actually have photographs of probably all of my children half naked, because that's what they do when they're 2, hands in the washing up water. It's sensory, and they feel like they're helping. So children often do want to help. Now, teenagers, they're probably going to push back. But if you can engage them through nonviolent communication in a way that they're motivated to help out with chores, then they are going to feel good in themselves. It builds their self-esteem. So that's really good for your relationships. I would just encourage you, if you're seeing your children as the enemy, and I've been there with my first, if you're seeing your children as a problem, then you really want to really have a look into the relationship stuff I've talked about as a high priority. With home education, I believe that we should be able to get to a point where we can just get joy from the process and from the people in our family. The easiest path is not a cheat, is the heading for this section. Now, that's where I talk about things like play-based learning, child-led learning, capturing the learning, different curriculums, etc. So if you are taking care of the relationship aspect of things with your child or children, a lot of things are going to come a lot easier if you're not butting heads. Now, there's a few things I'm bringing. Remember, I'm 45. I'm bringing a lifetime of learning to this topic today. I don't expect you guys to overnight access these resources and become experts. Pick your priorities. So sorting out your relationship would be a high priority. But if the child becomes alert to, oh, mum's really trying to fix us, they're going to push back on that. So just little steps all the time, and make sure that you're acting with integrity. Make sure it feels that you're at peace with the choices you're making with your family. So as a new home educator, most people want to create a school environment and replicate that. They're going to rush out and buy workbooks and curriculums. I would say hold your horses. Don't rush out and do that. If you want a guide as to what children should be learning at different ages, you could even go online and just ask someone, say, look, have you got some old workbooks for these age groups that I can have a look through? Because your child doesn't even need to complete those workbooks. You can use those workbooks as a guide to then either go online and download and print workbooks. You can, I think my mother used to draw up workbooks for me. Or if your child is not a child who likes to write, and we'll touch more on that later, you might find that you need to translate that learning to suit your child's learning style, and we'll touch on learning styles soon. But how that might look, for example, with my daughter yesterday, and yes, it was a Sunday morning, but things just fell into place to do a little bit of learning. These are very expensive items that the government has funded for my daughter. And I buy them from a Waldorf's toy store. You can get these online. Do support local where you can. So this is a great series for maths. No, you can't be here when I'm having my meeting. Thank you. Do I need to mute myself again? All right, sorry about that interruption. Okay, I'm having trouble stacking these up in my hand to show you, but it's a series of rings and a little doll, and 3 that are just a little circular biscuit shape. So I grabbed some of these out and I just made up a game with my daughter at the dining table. Little girl was visiting Granny, and Granny said, hey, can you help me? I'm packaging donuts for people who are buying, and I need 6 for each person. And I'd set up a stack with 1 ring and then 2 and 3, then all the way up to 6. And so she had to figure out how many to add to each stack. But then she also went on and she was going, oh, look, the doll's bigger than this stack and it's smaller than this stack and that sort of thing. So lots of learning there. I use an app that's out of New Zealand called Story Park to capture our learning, because if your child's doing a lot of workbooks, that's easy. You just get out the workbook and you can show the government the workbook. But when your child learns through conversation or through doing, it's a little bit harder unless you're going to take photographs or videos to capture that learning. Now, those toys that I just showed you come in a box with 3, 6, 9, 12 different colours. So you can imagine the scope for that for teaching maths. But I've just put a box together for a friend I'm going to visit today who's just decided to home educate. And I'll talk about this later, but these are just lids off food pouches. My daughter has some sensory issues, so she often eats her vegetables as a food pouch rather than fresh vegetables or cooked vegetables. I've actually drilled a hole, which is very easy to do, in these so they can use it for threading and construction. But you could also use these just as I used the donuts. You know, these could have been little cupcakes or something like that. They don't stack as well, but a direct comparison or alternative. Sorry, having trouble putting things back in here, and I've completely loaded up this box, and I hope it does bless this person I'm going to give it to, and I'm really making a mess of it. Curtain rings, and if you don't know what they are, I'm going to show you. Okay, these wooden rings you can often find at secondhand shops. You know, if you have a refuse shop, a tip shop, you'll often find these. They cost a lot to buy new, but you'll get a bag very, very cheaply at a secondhand shop, or you could go online and just ask. Someone might have some tucked away. A lot of people aren't using those styles of curtains anymore. And so you can do them for maths. But anyway, I'm going to go into that later because that's a topic called loose parts. So I've just been talking about play-based learning, child-led learning. You can have all these resources that the children can just come along and play with. Yes, I was talking about workbooks and curriculums. So I have purchased, I've decided to go down the Waldorf route because it is holistic, which means it takes care of the whole child. It will also suit all learning styles. If you are interested in going down that route too, you will find a certain amount of materials online, but one of the philosophies or one of the ideals of Waldorf Steiner education is no screen time. So it's one of those communities that's been a little bit slow on getting resources onto the internet. But what I've grabbed is the Handbook for Steiner Waldorf class teachers, tasks and content of the Steiner Waldorf curriculum, Rudolf Steiner's curriculum for Steiner Waldorf schools, and then I've also grabbed some supplementary books. So this is painting and drawing in Waldorf schools because art is a huge part of how they teach. And I also have a book on teaching the Waldorf way from age 1 to 8. And then if you go online, you can find videos giving beautiful examples of how we might teach in a Waldorf setting. Now, I wouldn't even say you need to buy something like that, because if you, even like I said, just go onto your home education forum and say, guys, I'm just after workbooks. We don't need to use them. We just want to look at them for what different age groups are learning. And remember that the age group, your child might actually have different developmental needs. So they might fit a different age group to what you're working with. And it's not unusual for a child to be delayed in one subject but advanced in another. So what you can do is have a look. So particularly if it's a maths workbook, you can look at what they're learning and either transfer that just straight to manipulatables like I was showing you. These are some other ones. I love big buttons. And for example, just a very simple example might be, and I'm going to use these little wooden numbers I got from Bunnings, but you could just draw numbers on a piece of paper. And, you know, you might have the numbers 7 plus 3 and then 7, 3 and 10. And then you can just encourage the child to use manipulatables to put the 7 objects below the number 7 and 3 with the number 3. And then they're counting those. And there's your 10, for example. But once you get in the flow of that, you know, you'll tap into that creative part of your brain and find different ways to bring work off the book and off the page. Now, the reason why I'm very motivated about that way of teaching is that my daughter is dysgraphic, which means that she can't see images in her head. She can see with her eyes, but she can't imagine images, which makes it very, very difficult for her to write, whether it's numbers or words. I'm just looking at the time and we do have to keep moving. So free loose parts and resources. So I've shown you some that you can spend money on, and these beautiful donatee things. Free or nearly free. You can make your own Play-Doh. And I do recognise, I've done it tough financially myself in the past. I know that a trip to the beach might be something you don't have money for, just the fuel sometimes. Getting the ingredients to make Play-Doh might be something you just don't have the money for. But let me just go through these and hopefully something works for you. If you can get to the beach, or again, there might be something at a secondhand shop or something. Shells, they can play with them. You can do maths with them. You can incorporate them into science learning, etc., etc., etc. As I showed you, the curtain rings, you might be able to find someone who has some yarn to give away. Paper cups can be useful for all sorts of different things in home education. Someone might have wood off cuts. These are extra special. These are Huon pine. They smell so beautiful. It's a specialty timber here in Australia, here in Tasmania. And I purchased these some time back. But you might be able to find someone who can give you wood off cuts. So icy pole sticks, when they're finished, the icy pole collects them and sterilise them with dishwater. Old buttons, these actually cost me a lot of money. Well, actually, I think they cost the government a lot of money. But, you could find some old buttons, or someone might be giving some away. Bottle lids of all different shapes and sizes. And then I've put pegs in here because children can put pegs together. Just put a peg onto an icy pole stick for construction. Add a little bit of that yarn, some string. I've got little paper not icy pole stick straws, drinking straws, and what do we call these? Can't remember what the modern name is. I can't remember what the old name is for them. Pipe cleaners. And they're a modern version of the original pipe cleaner that men used to use to literally clean their pipe. I also have some fleece that I purchased. Wonderful sensory item. I hope I've been lifting these up high enough to show you. So I'm just going to pop them back into that box. Wow. So, pine cones. I don't know if that's actually, is that a type of pine cone? I'm not sure. Pine cones, acorns. You can go to parks at certain times of year and pick them up off the ground and then take them back to use. Even older children, a child of 12 might use these things for incorporating into imaginative play where they're learning. Packaging, that they, if they had 4 of these, they could use them to support a platform. It's also a good one for a drum. You take the lid off for a drum. A drum needs an opening, depending on your child's age. I mean, an older child might really, really love to make their own drum. The other thing is, if you had 6 of these, or any number, you could cut them to different lengths, and they're going to play a different note as you drum on them. So the list I have: bottles, tubs, lids, acorns, gum nuts, shells, sticks, leaves, pebbles, stones, paint color cards. When we go to Bunnings, my daughter often goes and grabs a couple of the little color sample cards at Bunnings. So in the early years, you could be doing something like color matching with those. You grab a card and you go, okay, what matches this color? And you're using a vocabulary to talk about the color. All right. Some of the resources that really don't cost much, or you might have around, I've said tubs. Water. You can do a lot of learning with water, sand and mud. And these are sensory items. Sorry, there's a bit of hair on my front and it's tickling my nose. Look into handcrafts. There is a wonderful website. I'm just going to find it. Now, handcrafts are great for fine motor, and fine motor activities actually wire up the brain. So, where are we? Oh, no, look at all that Pinterest. Craft, learn, and play. Interesting. But I think that is Bella Luna Toys. That's a good Sorry, I'm browsing through this and not sharing. Let me screen share. The website I want's not coming up. It usually comes up at the top of my search results, and it hasn't done. What does that bring up? Oh my goodness. How frustrating. Wildlife Library. Okay, so I don't know. I haven't looked at this one. There is a wonderful website, and it's called Wildlife Handcraft, and I don't know the rest of the website, but it's well worth finding if you can. The Wildlife Library. So this looks like it would be a really good resource. The relevance of handwork and craft. And if you can find that website, or even go on YouTube and look up, let's see if we can find some Waldorf. Let's see what we can find here. Weaving on a stick loom. So straight away you get all these. Oh, I love that. Get all these different ideas, okay? And you want to choose handwork that is for the right age group. Look at this. It says first grade handwork project. So straight away, if your child's in first grade, you know that is probably appropriate for them. So just wanted to show you that. So that's not just a child doing flippant fun and wasting time. It's actually all that handwork is fine motor work that is wiring up their brain. Knitting, sewing, painting, drawing. And it's worth having a look at Sundays with Sarah. She has a good collection of videos, and some of hers are about painting. Did you see that? I'm just going to back off. Finger knitting with children. So that's one of the very first handcrafts. The very first handcraft I've seen done with children is where you will hold string at one end, double it over, hold it at one end and twist it at the other, then bring it together and run your hand down it, and it makes a cord. That is the very first introduction I see to handwork. But yeah, definitely explore her channel. And she does have a little bit explaining. Sundays with Sarah, let's say painting. Gosh, dyslexic typing today. Oh gosh, I still haven't done it, but it's brought it up. So she has some tutorials on how to teach watercolor painting, even in the very early years, and why they do it that way. So again, heaps of resources there. I do want to encourage you to, if you really don't know what wildlife education is, just go on YouTube and do some exploring. So Wildlife Class 1, because of the lockdowns, we were starting to see some content shared online. I like this one because it shows how a main lesson looks in a wildlife school. So I am just going to share that. And a lot of people think that wildlife equals no books, and that's absolutely not true. Your child can be fully immersed in an environment with access to lots of books, but literacy is actually taught in a much more appropriate way with wildlife education. And there's a lot of storytelling in teaching wildlife style. Obviously, for the right age group, you wouldn't expect a 13-year-old to sit down. Maybe they might be happy to sit down with younger siblings, but generally a 13-year-old wouldn't want you to be teaching through a childish story. But you can, even with adults, you can introduce your own experiences or something, and that will help them to learn the content and be engaged. Sorry, I'm just firing up software I don't want there. So let's just try that again. There is a lot of information out there around wildlife education. And it's worth hunting through it. Rudolf Steiner has a lot of lectures online. He started this up 100 years ago, so it's other people sharing his teachings. It's well worth exploring. Okay, so I want to go quickly through learning styles, and I realize, you guys might want to email me with questions. Do I have a banner with my email address on here? I don't know. There we go. You're probably not, well, you may or may not be interested in Orchard, which is a platform I have for Christian believers to connect, but that has my email address there. If you have questions for me to do a subsequent home education video, you're more than welcome to fire them off to me in an email, and I'll do my best to gather them together. If I have time, I will go back and share some more resources, because I've got a whole host of stuff here that I really wanted to show you. Know your child's learning style. So my youngest daughter, if she was in a mainstream school, she would be known as the kid who speaks when they're not supposed to, wriggles around, can't keep still, distracts the other children, and is a slow learner. She's not. She's actually very, very intelligent. The thing is that she is an auditory learner, and she has a few things going on that influence her behavior. So I'll talk about the things influencing behavior in a minute, but knowing your child's learning style is going to make all the difference, and it's going to make a lot of difference to how you get along. Anything your child's doing that you don't like, have a little think. What need are they meeting by behaving like that? And maybe I don't know what that need is, so I'm just going to be very loving and patient with my child. So a child who can't sit still, oftentimes the connections are not made in their body yet to give them information about where their body parts are in space. So even if I close my eyes, I would know where my hands are right now. Some children haven't developed that skill and that sense yet. Excuse me. And so what they'll do is they'll touch things to get to know where their body is. It gives them feedback to know where the different parts of their body are. So these are the children who might rock on their chair, or they might wrap their legs around the chair legs. And they might be tapping and drumming on the table and wanting to touch things and handle things all the time. And so there are ways to meet their needs. So for anyone who's seen that in their child, look up sensory avoidance and sensory seeking, and you may well find some information. Look, since I've started down that direction, I will share some resources as well around that. So let's just go down another little rabbit hole. Proprioception, I hope I'm spelling this correctly. What is disorder, symptoms, and more? So straight away, we got a website up there. I'd say that's a very WebMD. That's a very clinical approach, not a holistic approach to it. What are we doing here? So I'm just going to seriously. Oh, I'm not sure what. Are you kidding me? Okay, guys, it looks like I'm back in. I hope the audio is okay. That was the weirdest thing. The browser shut down the window, and then when I came back in, it was like there were two operating, and then I had to quit it. And this is saying that I'm still broadcasting, so who knows what we missed. What was I sharing? That's my attempt to get back into StreamYard. I am starting to run out of time. So I just want to go through the learning styles because it's really, really important, and it really is going to influence the relationship that you have with your child. I was talking about, my child. Proprioception. There is a wonderful, so I was going to share that article. I haven't read through it. But I came across a really wonderful website about proprioception and interoception. So proprioception is about where is my body in space. Children can seem very, very clumsy if that isn't developed the way you would expect. And they'll be constantly touching things. They might even bump into other children because they're just trying to get that sensory feedback as to where they are in space. Interoception is more internal, so it's about your body's internal signals. It might be your body's signals saying that you're hungry, that you're tired, even just, temperature, all that sort of stuff. Just trying to, I think I'll link that. So I have linked that. Okay. So let's see if I can find that article. I think it was what is remedial eurythmy led me to this article, which was a really great article. You and your child's health. If this is the one I'm thinking, really fabulous article. So if it seems to be a bit over your head, just read through it a couple of times. And, it's good practice. You need to become an expert in some respects over time if you're going to home educate your child. So it's a good idea to really have an attitude of wanting to learn. So if there's a word you don't understand, look it up on the internet, and maybe there's a word in that article you don't understand, look that one up as well. So yeah, that article I just wanted to share. It's a really good article. Okay, so a child who, we talk about sensory seeking and sensory avoidance, and you can look for resources around those topics. I'll just see if there's an article. Sensory seeking is probably going to give you the best. Yeah. So my child, I believe, is an auditory learner, which means that she likes to talk about what she's learning because that's how she processes it. So I'm very visual. What was that link to? I'm trying to remember. So she might get overwhelmed if there's too many noises going on, but at the same time, she can learn through she learns best through auditory resources. So she'll learn best by discussion, by an audio or video. I'm just going to go quickly through these because there's plenty of information on the net about these. But I would say if you're feeling frustrated with your child and you're having trouble engaging them, it's really important to try and figure out what's your child's learning style, and then you can deliver the learning in a way that suits them. So a visual learner, they visualize in their head. They like charts, maps, diagrams, like tables to organize themselves, all that sort of stuff. And you can use colors to classify different learning and that sort of thing. You could use flashcards with them, and you can use drawings, or they can be drawing to support their notes. You can use sticky notes, anything that's visual and sort of stands out. Auditory, they learn best by hearing. They remember what they've heard through discussion. They've got an excellent memory. You might find you've got a child like mine. She will hear lyrics once, and a year later she will regurgitate those lyrics word for word. So they have a really good memory for what they've heard. They can get overwhelmed. They can get sensory overload from too many inputs if they're trying to focus on one. But at the same time, interestingly, they might have several inputs and they'll be able to take in several inputs. You know, there might be 3 conversations and they'll be able to take them all in at once. I can't imagine that. I would get so overwhelmed because I'm very visual. So they like to learn through discussion. So for me, I used to get annoyed because my daughter wants to just talk. But now I just take a deep breath. It's not my style, but that's how she learns. It's how she processes what she's learning. So I might teach her through a conversation. And if you are driving, that's often a really great time for auditory learners to learn because they want to chat with you while you're in the car. So turn off your music, turn off your podcasts, and let the children have a discussion with you. They will learn from recordings, videos, stories, and just be patient about giving them time to process by learning. So you might be like, why do they have to talk about this? We've already discussed this. They already know it, but they are still processing it by discussing it. Kinesthetic or hands-on learning, learn by doing. So, for example, actually, that's interesting. You might literally stand beside a child and cook with them. But with my daughter, because she's an auditory learner, what worked really well for her is I just stood off to the side and spoke the instructions to her, making sure I didn't miss any small details when I was teaching her how to cook scrambled eggs. So what you can do is interpret into a story. So these are children who any of these might not like using workbooks, for example. Visual learners might be okay with workbooks, but auditory and kinesthetic, probably not so much. But that's where you can interpret that learning into an activity. So that's where you get your little loose parts, we call them. Look up loose parts, really good to get an understanding of what they are and how you can use them. And, you know, instead of using the written numbers, your child can be hands-on, touching, moving these around. Kinesthetic learners also can be supported by being able to move while they're learning. They might be a child where say if you're in a classroom setting, you might be asking them to wipe off the blackboard, or, you know, do the little chores around the classroom, which means they can be up and walking around legitimately, rather than having to sit still, which doesn't work too well for hands-on learners. You can interpret the learning into a story that you share, Waldorf-style stories. Look it up, as like a little theatre with toys, for example. Experiential learning is really good for them, but experiential learning is very good for all children. An example of that is in the upper grades, if a child's learning about electricity, instead of just looking at a textbook, they might pull apart a toaster and actually put some electric circuits together, for example. If you are going to do book-based learning, short blocks are very important, and then give them a break to do something physical. Facilitate movement while they're learning. And so with Waldorf education, it's holistic. It addresses all of these needs for children. So with maths, they might, say in class 1, they might do skip counting by throwing a beanbag to one another. So the beanbag goes around the class and it's 2, 4, 6, 8. Or the children might have a fidget toy. In a Waldorf setting, they're more likely, and I wish I'd brought some, I didn't, to have beeswax, modelling beeswax, which is really cool. So then we have reading and writing. Now, most people probably are reading and writing learners, and so mainstream education is set up very much for that because it's economical and it's convenient. A teacher can give a child a workbook to work on while the teacher goes back and marks work or plans. So you can see, understanding that the traditional system is set up for children who learn by reading and writing, and if your child learns by one of these other styles, you'll see immediately why your children isn't accommodated by the mainstream system. A child who loves reading and writing is probably going to learn well in the early grades through workbooks, and, you know, and be motivated to do that. And in the older age groups, we'll be able to learn from textbooks, where you just give them the textbook really and say, right, we're doing this section, and off they go. If your child has challenges, they also have gifts. So I just want to give an example where I'm very visual. My youngest daughter does not like to write at all. She traces if she's writing, and even then I'm not sure really how much she's actually learning by doing that process. Because she might be concentrating on following the line rather than internalizing the whole shape of that letter or word. But as we've discussed, she is very gifted in that auditory sense. And so she will find her niche in the world. She might be a very good storyteller. You know, she might have her own YouTube channel one day. She already wants to have one. And she can learn by listening. So I've had to get around the guilt factor. I don't like screen time, but she's very drawn to it for 2 reasons. One is because she's auditory. She will learn from being told rather than reading in a book, although she does appreciate books. And also because she can't hold a memory in her head, or she can't imagine things visually, she loves to watch TV because she gets that picture there in front of her eyes. So I've talked a bit about proprioception and interoception. I strongly recommend you go through that article. Yes, you may not understand it all. I don't understand all of it, but there are some absolute gems. And as you learn about your child, you will understand more. A little word on proprioception, where it's about, you know, your child developing the neural pathways to understand where they are in space. Another good activity for them is if you can go to like the adventure playgrounds, places where they're climbing, nature walks, where they're going up and down hills, encourage them in a safe setting to walk backwards sometimes. But if you look up, let's look up, I'm not sure if that's the window that I want, but let's just try screen sharing. Let's look up occupational therapy proprioception. Scholarly articles, proprioception and why it's important. So I think I'll link that. Yes. Yeah. So it gives you different activities that you can do to support your child to build up those neural pathways. So more on proprioception. I prefer that to the WebMD section, actually. So children can manifest all sorts of challenging behaviours if they're not fully developed in proprioception and interoception. So just look into that and have an understanding. There's no point getting angry at a child who won't and can't sit still. Children are eager to please. They'll please us if they can. Mindful parenting, so rich environment. There's no point letting your children watch random TV that is really all about selling a toy to them and giving them a whole lot of plastic push-button toys if you want them to learn. What children need in order to learn, and I'm going to find another video for you and share it. What is loose parts? Now this, if you look up loose parts, it usually speaks about early childhood. But even an older child up around 12 can get benefit from having loose parts available for them to play with. So that's the sort of thing that I was showing you, the sort of resources. All of these could be considered loose parts, you know. Even a great big plank of timber outside, these definitely count as loose parts, even though they're not some freebie picked up off the beach. These are loose parts that I actually made a few years ago, and you can buy branch blocks. We'd cut down an acacia tree, and that's not the perfect example, but what I was aiming to do, if you had two of this one, it would make one of those. Now, look into Montessori. I'm not a great fan of Montessori. It was aimed at children with special needs in group settings. So if you're home educating, it might not be so applicable, but it is worth looking at. But I definitely err along Waldorf over Montessori. If you had two of this one, they would equal one of those. Now, I don't ever do maths with these. The children just play with these, and they'll put little animals on them and they'll stack them up into towers. But what they don't realise is they're internalising that mathematics, that size comparison, etc. You might be able to find, if you know someone who has a bit of woodwork skills, you might find someone who's happy to help you to put something like that together. These are very expensive. They're Grimm's wooden toys, absolutely lovely. You know, if you're planning to have 4 children, it's worth investing in some of them. I go to Bunnings sometimes, but you can also get these, find them online, or support your local Waldorf shop. Little peg dolls, and I painted these myself. Look into Waldorf style education and seasons, because we try to highlight the cycles of the world around us within the education, because it's very easy in this day and age to miss that. Did I mention plastic animals? Really good one to have available for children. I was talking about pine cones. This is just another wood round from that same tree that we had cut down, but a different size. So these ones I had cut at about 2 centimetres, not an exact science. I was cutting them myself. That beautiful Huon pine. I'll try to show you this without them all falling out. So that was just from Bunnings. You'd find these at craft shops, around about $10 a set. And my child started using these without any discussion with me, which is fine. I'm just trying to see what else I have to show you. River stones. So I was living near Queenstown on the west coast at one stage, and there was a whole range of different stones would come washing down. But you know, you might be somewhere where you can pick up some pebbles or some stones to use as loose parts. Now, I purchased these. Sometimes the children love them, sometimes they ignore them. I use these with blocks. These are, I'll bring the whole thing over. I'm just conscious of time. These are a Kmart version, a very cheap version of a Grimm's product. Grimm's is usually stocked by Waldorf. They have that beautiful big rainbow. But the cheaper stores are starting to do copycat versions. So again, you can see the maths here, where 1 block, 2 blocks, add another one, and it equals that. So you could use this and say, look, we're going to do some maths, but at the same time, you could add something like this as platforms, and the children can make a huge tower, and they get to know that, oh, you know, I need 4 cubes to have an even platform for this. I need to add another cube, or adding, I've had children who've had to add, they've started out using these ones and then they've had to add a block to these ones to have an even support, group of support. So I'm just going to put that on the floor. What else? Coasters. These appealed to me because I knew the children could pretend that they were ice for the little polar bears, etc. They were from Kmart, quite cheap. If you have money to spend, at the Waldorf shops, you'll find or just search it even, pentatonic instruments. You can hardly hear that. Sorry, it's not the right mallet. So you can hear that that's not offensive. If you buy any cheap xylophone or glockenspiel from any toy store, you're going to find that it doesn't sound that great. and sorry, that sounds a lot better when you've got the right mallet. The thing with pentatonics is it's carefully chosen notes available to the child, so that it doesn't matter how they play, it sounds great. Now you might go, well, no, they need to learn music properly. Initially, it's really good for children to have access to pentatonic instruments because it gives them wonderful self-esteem and a sense that, wow, I can do this, I can make beautiful music. Whereas if you put a child on an instrument that's not pentatonic too young, they're just going to get frustrated. So that was something that I wanted to touch on, is setting work for your child that's not too difficult and not too easy. A common thing I've seen in the mainstream system is teachers at the start of the year assess a child's reading ability, and they put a book in front of the child that's too easy. And I had this happen to me, and I've seen it happen to several children. And they're just looking at it going, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm reading novels at home, and you place a book in front of a child with only 2 or 3 words when they're reading novels and chapter books. They're not even going to get that you want them to read it. And so the child ends up looking like they're delayed and can't read at all. Whereas really it's just like, so what? You know, 1 wheel, 2 wheels, or whatever the text is on the page. What do you want from me? You know, so it's important not to provide work that's too easy for the child, but not too challenging. You don't want the child to feel overwhelmed and to decide that they're stupid or something like that. Apps, TV, books. If you're in Australia, I definitely would recommend that you try to limit TV to what's on ABC Kids and look up their educational section. If you're Christian, then you're going to have a Christian channel that you prefer to go to. Possibly, I'm just mindful of time. Books, same thing can happen. So what you need to be mindful, which just means thinking about your decisions, okay? And you can get into that mindset over time. When you go to the toy shop, you don't just pick up whatever current thing is popular, because you're actually just putting money in someone's pocket. Whereas if you purchase these loose, you know, these open-ended resources, the children will enjoy those even when that current fad is over, and they can use their imagination to use these in lots and lots and lots of ways. I mean, have a think about this. These have the holes, so they could be threaded with string or pipe cleaners. And then, what have we got? I haven't seen children. Oh, yeah, I don't think I've seen children do this, but, you know, you could make a tower where you're stacking these with the different elements. Sorry, I keep forgetting to lift these up high enough. Don't look at Waldorf and go, that's really expensive, I can't do it. You don't need the expensive supplies. Very, very expensive crayons, very good quality. If you can afford them, yes, do it. Otherwise, don't. Just get what you can afford. Same with the pencils. Stockmar brand, really, really, really nice pencils. Maybe start with just the primary colours. Even just 6 colours, or don't. For $3, you'll get a really nice set of pencils from the right place. So the other thing I'm talking about is books. So last year I did a big colour books because I was given a lot of secondhand books. A lot of them were very commercial. Those books were out there to make somebody money, not to enrich my children's lives. So this book is an example of what you'll find in a Waldorf bookstore. And it's a lovely story about a hen who wants to go off and have raise up some chicks. Okay, beautiful artwork, beautiful story, and the children are learning something about the world. You can also share the stories, like I said, you know, use a couple of toys and do it like a little theatre set up. Children love that up to quite an age. My Country, so this is just from Kmart here locally, and it maybe costs $6, but it starts to introduce some Indigenous concepts to the children. If you were going to spend money on one collection of books for the age group up to when they're independently reading, which could be any age, you know, from 5 till 12 or 13, this book is the Osborne. I'll show it to you. That's, sorry. It's not a mirror, so it's hard to direct. So lots and lots of different stories. A lot of them are stories from around the world, and they're set up to support reading. So I'll try to find a good example. So you can see how there's text on one side that's larger than the other. So if a child's just starting to read, like you can read these books to your child who's not reading yet, but if a child's just starting to read, they can read the big words while you read the smaller words. And they're not all exactly like that. There's a range of them. That is not cheap. It is Osborne's My First Reading Library. I managed to get it at a ridiculously cheap price many years ago. If you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. Again, go online, look at what's going secondhand. Often refuse shops and tip shops are selling books secondhand as well. The point of this part is just to say, be mindful. Don't just get what everyone else is getting. Don't just let the kids watch whatever everyone else is watching. If you limit time on the screen, children will, and you are consistent with that, children will engage themselves in other play that's much more productive and educational. I'm just going to get through it. So developmentally appropriate, not too easy, not too difficult. So you do need to spend some time, you know, like I've been teaching some things to my daughter, and it's like, okay, she knows that, she knows that, she knows that. That's great. So she feels confident and comfortable with what we're discussing, but she's not challenged. And children lose interest if they're not challenged. But again, if they're too challenged and just can't do it, it's legitimate to scaffold by going in and helping them do the work. But also that will put them off if over and over you're doing the work for them. Learning at home. Unschooling, so look into unschooling if your child has a lot of anxiety, to undo that association with education and negativity, and look into nature walks, cooking, child-led assignments and projects if they're older. There's a whole host of stuff they can learn. So the last thing I want to say is there are books about how children learn at home, which are of value. I think in my previous video I was sharing how I plan and record. And there's actually a planner that I've uploaded as a freebie on my website, which you should be able to find in the details link below this video. Just looking at the time and wanting to wrap up. Was there anything else? I just want to share this one amazing book that we got from Kmart. So it wouldn't have cost an awful lot. I think the government paid for this one. It's called Slow Down for Children, Class 1, Class 2. Really, really lovely one. We start our day by reading a page or two of this, and that's not the greatest example. That's a beautiful one. That's about a rainbow. So it just goes through different natural processes like life cycles, condensation and rain. This is a rainbow. It's as close as you're going to get to experiencing something without actually experiencing it. It just highlights all the beautiful little details that you would observe if you were there to experience that and watch that. So that's Slow Down by Rachel Williams and Freya Hartaz. I highly recommend that book if you had one book on your shelf. Now I've given you a choice to make, haven't I? I'm going to go. I really do pray that this video has blessed you, given you some confidence. I believe that I'm called to support people with home education. So if you have questions, if this leaves you with questions, put them in the comments box or email them to me. And I will do my best to get back on here when time permits to do another video for those who are home educating. Right. God bless. Have a beautiful day.